Hello, welcome to the session 5 on laser basics. In this session, these are the objectives. We will discuss various pumping schemes which will be coming as 2-level, 3-level and 4-level pumping schemes. Then we will also see some applications of lasers. So these are actually general applications out of which in your syllabus only this industrial application is mentioned. Then another application that you have to learn as part of your syllabus is holography. Whereas in this class we will see a general uh, content regarding medical application, industrial and research application, and some other aspects also. Before we move on to the actual content in session 5, let me discuss one problem raised, one question, a doubt raised by one of you. So the question was about a ruby laser. She asked me that since chromium ions are absorbing green and blue, how laser light has got red color. That was the question, and she was asking me whether it is due to the chromium ion which is imparting red color to the photons. In order to explain the answer to that question, I would like to show you this electromagnetic spectrum. The complete electromagnetic spectrum is shown here in this black and white picture at the top, and you can see the gamma rays, X-rays, UV rays, infrared rays, and in between these UV and infrared there is this visible range, and then radar, all those radio frequency waves which are used in TV and radio communication is shown on the right side, right end. And you can see this arrangement is in the increasing order of wavelength, and the wavelength is shown below that scale. The wavelength is given in meters, and you can see the gamma rays wavelength is of the order of 10 raised to minus 14 meters, whereas in the case of visible light the wavelength will range between 10 raised to minus 8 to 10 raised to minus 4 meters. Then you can see these radio waves, FM rays, which are 1 meter wavelength, and then beyond that it will be more longer. The wavelength will be still higher. So this is what I would like to show you, this visible spectrum, the wavelength between 10 raised to minus 8 to 10 raised to minus 4 meter, and that is shown as a magnified segment in which you can see the violet, the colors ranging from violet to red. So it is this part which is sensitive to, which we can see, the human eye can see only this part, and that is why we call it the visible spectrum. It is depending on the frequency or wavelength, it is appearing to be in different colors. So when in the previous question, when you say this ruby laser is the atoms in the ruby system is absorbing green and blue photons, it just means it is capable of absorbing photons whose energy corresponds to this blue region and green region, or its frequency will be corresponding to the blue and green region. So in order to illustrate it, I have shown an energy level diagram on the right. So when I say a particular photon is capable of absorbing a particular atom is capable of absorbing blue photon, it just means its frequency is in such a way that if you convert that frequency into energy, that energy will be equal to E4 minus E0, and the atom which is capable of absorbing green photon just means the energy of that photon which this atom can absorb will correspond to E3 minus E0. So that's all. So when we say a photon is having a particular color, it only means its frequency is in such a way that when you calculate H into nu, that energy will correspond to it will fall like this, it will match with this energy level diagram that you have on the right side. Okay, so when I say a photon, the color of a photon is red, what does that mean? It just means it is in the red region of the electromagnetic spectrum. And if an atom is capable of absorbing red photon, it means this atom has got a pair of energy levels which are positioned in such a way that the energy difference between its two levels will be equal to E1 minus E0, so that a photon which is in this red region of the spectrum can be absorbed by that atom, and that atom can get excited from E0 to E1. Okay, so in order to have an excitation from E0 to E2, it will need a photon which will be in the yellow band of the spectrum. Okay, so it is only this frequency requirement which you can convert into energy using the basic equation E is equal to h nu, or you can find out the wavelength corresponding to that using the relation C is equal to nu lambda. So it's just conversion between energy to frequency, frequency to energy, wavelength, and so on. So when I say a photon is having a particular color, it just means the energy of that photon matches with that color in the visible spectrum. Okay, so if you ask me why these atoms in the ruby laser is absorbing blue and green photons but the laser emitted is red in color, it is because these atoms in the ruby laser is capable of its energy levels are in such a way that these atoms are capable of absorbing photons in the blue region and green region of the spectrum. So by absorbing those photons, these atoms will go to excited states which are actually above our upper laser level. So when these atoms go to the upper laser level, these levels are having short lifetime, so those atoms cannot stay there for a long time, so they will de-excite somehow normally through collision, and they will reach the upper laser level. So it is like a de-excitation from levels above the upper laser level to the upper laser level. So when it is coming down, or when it is undergoing the de-excitation, its energy will become lower. Then in order to have laser emission, this atom should again undergo stimulated emission, and it will de-excite from upper laser level to lower laser level. So upper laser level is actually below the initial levels into which these atoms got excited initially by absorbing green and blue photons. So obviously when this atom de-excites from the upper laser level to lower laser level, the energy of the emitted photon will correspond to the difference in energy between the upper laser level and lower laser level. So lower laser level is actually the ground level. It is from the ground level initially all the absorptions are starting. So initially the atoms absorbed blue and green photons, and they got excited to levels above the upper laser level. Then they de-excite and come to the upper laser level. Then they undergo stimulated emission and give rise to the photons. So obviously those photons will be having lower energy than green and blue. And in this case of ruby, it is coming the energy level difference between upper laser level and lower laser level is in such a way that the corresponding emitted photon will be falling within the red region of the spectrum, which is having lower energy than green and blue. Now we will see the pumping schemes. There are three different types of pumping schemes. So the first one, it is depending upon how many energy levels we make use of in order to create population inversion. So the first one is 2-level pumping scheme, and the other two are 3-level and 4-level scheme. So we will start with this 2-level scheme. It is actually just a hypothetical situation. It is not possible to have 2-level pumping scheme and create population inversion. So we will just see, for the sake of completeness of this topic, we will see what is a 2-level pumping scheme. If at all in some system we are capable of maintaining population inversion by making use of just 2 levels of the atoms involved in that laser active medium, then that will be referred to as 2-level pumping scheme. So pumping scheme is actually the paths through which these atoms are taken from ground level to the upper laser level in order to create population inversion. So here block arrow is shown. It is actually an upward arrow in which the excitation is taking place and the atoms are going from energy level E1 to energy level E2. So when that happens, if E1 is the lower laser level and E2 is the upper laser level, then there is a direct excitation and transition of the atoms from E1 to E2, and that should create population inversion. But in this case, it is not possible to have a population inversion if only two levels are involved. So that's why I told you it's not possible to create population inversion by making use of just two levels. But this is just a starting case. If at all it is possible to have such a system, then that will be the simplest system, and therefore this is shown, but it is theoretically not possible. Okay. So next, so the minimum number of levels required in order to create population inversion is 3. So that scheme is referred to as 3-level pumping scheme. So 3 levels are involved, which means we will be making use of 3 levels of the active centers which of that laser system. So Ruby is an example for a 3-level system, which means the chromium ions energy levels will be out of there will be actually many energy levels of chromium, but in order to create this in order to have this laser action, we'll be making use of 3 levels of the chromium atoms or chromium ions. So the way in which these atoms, or the paths along which these atoms are taken from ground state to the upper laser level, and then thereafter how it will reach back the ground state, all those indications which is drawn using this arrow, that will illustrate what is this pumping scheme. So in this case, you can see I am considering 3 levels. So they are E1, E2 and E3. The corresponding population is shown here, N1, N2 and N3. Here the lower laser level is the ground state and upper laser level is this second level E2. And since it is the upper laser level, I have marked it as metastable, which means it is having longer lifetime compared to other excited states. Then there is one level above the upper laser level which we require in order to create population inversion. So first thing is we do the pumping. When we do pumping, what we do is we excite, we give energy to the atoms, and these atoms from the ground state will absorb that energy and they will reach E3. So that is shown here by this upward block arrow which is drawn near pumping. So by pumping, we are taking atoms from ground state to E3, which is a level above the upper laser level. But that level is having short lifetime, which means the atoms will not stay there. So they will undergo de-excitation normally through collision, which is written as non-radiative decay, and it is indicated using this slanting arrow, and that is non-radiative decay, and therefore the atoms will come down to E2 from E3. And E2 is a metastable state and it is the upper laser level. So these atoms will remain there for a long time, so that will create population inversion. So essentially what we have done is we have taken the atoms from ground state to E2 through E3. We are not directly transferring the atoms from E1 to E2. So if you do that, it means it will be a 2-level system, and it is not possible, because whenever we do the transition from E1 to E2, immediately they will de-excite and come down to the lower level. So actually only 50% of the atoms will be transferred from ground state to the excited state if only 2 levels are used in this transition system. So that's why I told you 2-level system is theoretically not possible. So using one more level above the upper laser level, we have indirectly transferred the atoms from ground state to the upper laser level, or from lower laser level to upper laser level. So now we have got the population inversion, and when we do the stimulated emission, we have got the laser action, and there is de-excitation from E2 to E1, and all those atoms will come down to the ground state, which is the most stable state, and it will be accompanied by emission of laser. Okay, so this is what is happening, and we have got this 3-level this is referred to as 3-level pumping scheme. So Ruby is an example, but if you remember the energy level diagrams of Ruby, you know that there is a ground state and then there is an upper laser level, which is metastable state, and above that we are considering two energy bands into which the transition can take place by absorbing blue photons and green photons, right? So actually we are making use of two energy bands above the upper laser level. So if you actually count the number of energy levels that we use, we have got the ground state 1, then you have got the upper laser level, which is metastable state, which is 2, then these two energy bands above that. So it will actually make 4 energy levels, but we are saying that it is 3 level system. Why it is? Because the way in which we are counting, we have first one lower laser level, second one upper laser level, third one is actually all the energy levels above the upper laser level will be counted as 1, and all the energy levels below the lower laser level will be counted as 1. So here we don't have any energy levels below the lower laser level, and in the case of Ruby, I have not shown the diagram here, but if you refer the Ruby energy level system, you know the lower laser level is ground state, so there are no energy levels below the lower laser level. So ground state, lower laser level 1, above that you have got the upper laser level 2, then above that you have got 2 bands, so all the energy levels above the upper laser level will be counted as 1. So that will make the number of levels 3. So so therefore Ruby is a 3 level pumping scheme. Okay. Now dealing with the 4 level pumping scheme, it is just one more level will be used, and the way in which we are going to count is you have got the ground state, then above that we have got the lower laser level, which is E1 in this diagram, and then above that we have got E2, which is the upper laser level, and above that we have got E4, which is so the way in which we are going to count is lower laser level, upper laser level, then all the levels above the upper laser level, and all the levels below the lower laser level. So that will make the total number of energy levels 4. So helium is an example for this type of a laser system, but if you read the textbooks, you will see in some cases they will argue that helium is a 3 level laser system, but I would like to consider helium to be a 4 level laser system, because you have got this helium energy levels and neon energy levels, and there are different ways in which you can select upper laser level and lower laser level in the case of helium. So because different emissions are possible from helium neon laser, but the most common emission is this red color emission, and in that case the upper laser level is actually the topmost level. Above that we don't consider any levels, but still this will coming under a 4 level system, because we are making use of the neon energy levels. So in the case of helium, I am not showing the diagram here. Energy level, you just go and see what is the energy, how this energy level diagram is drawn in the case of helium neon laser. You have got this lower laser level, which is an intermediate level, and upper laser level is also normally an intermediate level, but in some cases the upper laser level can be the topmost level. But even in that case also, it is possible to consider this as a 4 level system because of the involvement of neon level. So in this case, you have got the pumping transition from ground state to the levels above the upper laser level. From there is non-radiative decay to the upper laser level, then lasing transition, which will take the atoms to the lower laser level. From there is some kind of de-excitation which is going on. Normally through collision, in the case of helium neon laser, these atoms will collide with the walls of the tube and they will lose energy and they will come down to the ground state. So this is the 4 level system, and why this is actually more efficient than 3 level system, because in the case of 3 level system, after the laser emission, all these atoms are coming down to the lower laser level, which means it will immediately destroy the population inversion. Because the lower laser level is getting populated. What we need is the upper laser level should be populated. So in the case of 3 level system, we have got such a difficulty, but in the case of 4 level system, after the laser emission, these atoms are coming down to the lower laser level, but those atoms will not stay there because there is a ground state below that level, which is more stable. So somehow these atoms will lose their energy. In the case of helium, it will collide with each other, and it will collide with the walls of the tube also, and it will lose this extra energy and come down to the ground state. So lower laser level does not face the problem of accumulation of atoms. So therefore it is not a threat to the population inversion. But obviously after the laser emission the upper state is depopulated, but that will be restored because of the presence of this pumping system which is on. So that's why 4-level system is superior compared to 3-level system. So in this slide I have compared all these schemes, 2-level, 3-level and 4-level. In the case of 2-level it is not possible to realize population inversion, so it is this is just a hypothetical situation. 2-level system is not possible, whereas 3-level system is efficient and 4-level system is the best scheme. And in the case of 2-level the rate of pumping and emission are the same, and that's why we say it is impossible to realize. So in the case of 2-level system there is no population inversion created between lower laser level and upper laser level. And the case of 3-level system, lower laser level is the ground state and upper laser level is an excited state. But the problem is after lasing the population builds up at the lower laser level. So therefore we have to suitably adjust the pumping rate in order to maintain population inversion and laser action again. Whereas in the case of 4-level system, which is the best scheme, both upper laser level and lower laser level are excited states. So after the lasing action, population will not accumulate at lower laser level because of the presence of ground state below the lower laser level, but the atoms will be removed from the upper laser level, which will be restored because through the pumping source. Now moving on to the applications of laser. First one we will see some of the medical applications. You see this LASIK eye surgery. It is the most commonly used technique, and it is very popular. It is a laser surgery. It is a surgery in the eye using laser, and normally it is used to correct the curvature of the lens or curvature in the cornea. So lens correction and the cornea correction will be done normally to correct the short sight or long sight. So these are the procedures. So all these I have described in another video, but here you can see some eye drops will be given at first, and then using a laser a flap is cut on top of this cornea. Then it is using a laser the surgery is carried out, which will correct the curvature. So there are two ways in which you can use it. For example, if the patient is having cataract, there will be some opaque accumulations on the cornea, so which can be removed using a laser. Otherwise, if it is the curvature correction which is required, then we will have to use a different laser. So depending on the requirement, different lasers should be used, and normally excimer laser or femtosecond lasers are used for this procedure. So once when that correction is done, this flap which is cut from the top, it will be put back into position. So it does not require stitching to take this to the normal state again, because the cut which is made using laser is extremely precise. Therefore even without stitching it will normally join and regain the original state in a few days. So that's why this kind of surgery, it is also referred to as bloodless surgery, because it does not require too much cut on the tissues, and also the laser energy which is used will not require much, will not result in much heating of the tissues. So normally these kind of operations are referred to as bloodless surgeries. And another thing, this is also very common, it is referred to as laser assisted angioplasty. Normally the angioplasty is a technique. Here in this diagram it is not the laser angioplasty which is used, it is a normal balloon angioplasty. Angioplasty is a surgical procedure done when we develop deposits in the inner walls of the blood vessels. So that will prevent the flow of blood into and out of the heart, and it will lead to heart attack. So in in order to cure that, what we in the surgical procedure, what is done is somehow these deposits which are shown in like this yellow deposit, which is actually the fat deposit inside the blood vessels, that should be removed using a suitable procedure. So in this case, a catheter is inserted into the blood vessel, and when it reaches this in between these wherever this deposit is there, when it reaches that location, it will be stopped and then it will be allowed to expand. So in the second diagram you can see it is allowed to expand, and because of the pressure exerted by this balloon expansion, it will remove and destroy the fat deposited in the inner walls of the blood vessels. So this deposit will be removed and it will fall into the bloodstream, and once when it reaches the bloodstream, it will be normally flushed out of our body through the blood circulation system. So this is the normal angioplasty, whereas when you are in laser, it is referred the same procedure done using a laser, it is referred to as laser angioplasty. Here you can see a laser which is at the end of an optical fiber. It can be a fiber laser, or it is a suitable laser which is directed into the optical fiber, or a fiber carrying a laser. So two possibilities are there. It can be a fiber laser, or it can be another laser which is directed into the optical fiber, so the fiber will just act like a carrier. So that is inserted into the blood vessel. So actually at the end of this fiber, a camera will also be fixed, so that we will be the doctors will be able to see through, in a screen exactly where the fat is deposited. So when it reaches the location where the fat is deposited, we will stop inserting, and then the laser will be turned on, and when the laser is turned on, it will be absorbed by this fat, and due to the heat generated, that fat will be destroyed, and it will be removed from the inner walls of the blood vessel, and as in the previous case, it will be falling into the bloodstream, and later it will be removed. So this is the laser angioplasty. So there are other applications also in medicine, but these are the two. Eye surgery and angioplasty are the most common application which is used, but laser is used in other cases also, and there are variety of applications in which it is used for this scar removal, tattoo removal. So all these are cosmetic applications. Whereas it is also used for cancer diagnosis and cancer therapy. So in the case of therapy, cancer, it is unwanted multiplication of tissues. So these extra tissues, how it is removed using laser is the same procedure that we use in angioplasty. Light will be focused onto the tissues, and the tissues will be burnt and removed. So that is how laser is used in cancer treatment. And in the case of cancer diagnosis, how we use laser is we will use laser to illuminate the tissues, and these tissues are stained in some suitable dyes in such a way that these dyes will be attached to the cancerous tissues and not to the normal tissues. And when you illuminate using the laser, wherever these dye molecules are present, those dye molecules will absorb the light and it will emit fluorescence. So but the selection of the dyes are in such a way that it will be attached only to the cancer tissues and not to the normal tissues. So when we view the emission coming from these tissues, only the emission is coming only from the cancerous tissue, so it will allow us to locate exactly where the cancerous tissues are. So once when we identify the location of the cancer tissues, then we can deliver another laser that we use for treatment to burn those tissues and remove the cancerous cells. So that is how laser is used in cancer diagnosis and treatment. So there are variety of other applications also. I suggest you read a little bit more and learn at least a couple of examples of lasers which is used in specific applications. For example, whether it is used in dermatology, tattoo removal, cosmetic. For example, ruby can be used for these kind of applications. Then NDR laser, which we haven't learned, but it is an laser emitting infrared radiation. It has got a wide range of application. It is used both in industry and in medical application. Then another erbium YAG laser, it is used for surgery. There are a variety of other lasers which are used for surgery. You learn at least two specific examples of lasers along with the wavelengths and in the particular medical application in which it is used. Then coming to the industrial application, they are broadly these applications are cutting, drilling and welding. Generally we will call it material processing. So the way in which, for example, here I have shown you an electron microscope image of holes drilled in plastic. You can see the top diagram is the holes drilled in plastic using laser, and the lower one is conventional drilling, and you can see the edges are very clean when we are using laser. So there's a very sharp cuts can be made when we are using laser, and that is the advantage of the application of laser in material processing. So that also I have explained in detail in another video. Here I summarize some of the lasers which are used in a variety of applications. In this case also you learn at least a couple of examples along with the wavelength and the specific utility in industry. So when we explain the laser which is used in cutting, drilling and welding, you must have something like this schematic diagram. Where normally the laser that we use will be a huge laser which is very difficult to move. So what we do is the laser will be kept stationary somewhere, and using mirrors we will reflect the laser beam, and we will direct the laser beam to the required place where we want to process the material. So what we in some cases, if the material that we want to process is not very heavy, you can mount that material on a stage, and the stage can be moved depending on, for example, if you want to make a cut, then you mount the material onto a translation stage and focus the laser beam onto a single spot, then drill a hole there, then you move that material along the line where you want to make the cut. So it is like a series of consecutive holes will be drilled, and it will make a plain sharp cut. So essentially what we need is, you need the laser beam, then you need translation stage. It is a computer controlled stage which you can move along x, y and z direction. So depending on the way in which you want to make the cut, you have to move either the laser beam or you have to move the material. So for that the translation stage is required. So that is what is shown here. You have got the laser which is emitting, in this case it is this red color which is the laser emission. Then it is reflected using suitable mirror, which is written like beam bender or mirror. Then that should be focused using convex lens. So in order to increase the energy density at the spots where the laser is falling, we are focusing the beam so that maximum heat will be generated and the cut will be done easily. So all these will be whatever work piece that you have, it will be mounted on a translation stage, and depending on the shape that you want to cut, you will have to focus the beam. You keep the laser stationary, and all the optics like mirror, lens, everything you keep stationary so that the light will be falling at a particular spot. Then depending on the shape that you want to cut, you will have to move the workpiece. So that will help you create the required shape, required type of cutting. So that's how laser is basically used in cutting, drilling and welding. And how this cutting and drilling and welding it is taking place is because you are focusing a very high energy laser photons onto the workpiece. So that material will absorb the photon, and what happens is that when that material is absorbing the photon, it will get ionized first. So it will be ionized So that means it is having more energy now, so it will create heat, so because these atoms are going to the excited state and then it will de-excite. So during de-excitation it will liberate the energy, so the heat will be generated. So when we focus laser light into material, heat will be generated, and due to that heating, first the material will boil. And if you just want to make a cut, what you do is you move the laser beam along the line where you want to make the cut. So along that line the material will boil, then you just turn off the laser and separate the workpiece. So since you have got the materials, for example, if it is a metal, the metal has been boiled along a line, and then when you pull them apart, it will be coming out separately as two different pieces. So that's how the cut is made. So essentially the process is absorbing the laser light, the heat will be generated, and due to the heating, boiling and vaporization will take place. Either depending on your specific application, you can either boil and vapor. For example, if you want to make a cut, you can you can keep on heating and make the atoms vaporize, so that from that region the material will be removed and it will be cut into two pieces. Okay, whereas in the case of welding, we don't heat it as much. We don't heat it until it vaporizes, but what we do is we will heat until it boils. And when it boils, you can, for example, suppose you have got two separate pieces that you want to weld together. So these two edges that you want to weld together, you will focus light onto those two edges, so the material will vaporize. Then you bring them together, so that when they join, since it is already boiled, when they join, the laser light is already turned off. When they join, they will begin to cool down and it will become a single piece. So if you want to, so depending on your application, you will have to heat it to boiling point or to vaporization point. So if you want to make a drill, you have to remove the material, so you'll have to vaporize. Whereas if you want to weld, you will have to join the material, so melting is done first, which means boiling will be done. So this is the essential thing. Essentially, light will be absorbed by the material and it will create heating effect, and due to heating effect, vaporization or boiling will be taking place, which can be used for cutting and drilling. So another example is laser isotope separation. This is also an industrial application, because this is done for separating isotopes in nuclear power plants. For example, in this case, you can see uranium-235 and uranium-238. Suppose you have got a mixture of uranium-235 and U-238, and you want to separate it. Then what we do is, in this case, CO2 laser is used. It is emitting 10.6 to 10.8 micrometer. It will be absorbed by it is actually the starting laser, but anyway, there is a converter which will change the wavelength in such a way that it will be absorbed by this uranium. So what is happening is that when you have got a mixture of uranium 235 and uranium 238, here in this example a compound is drawn, but basically the absorption is taking place in the case of uranium 235 or 238. So what is done is you select a suitable laser in such a way that the wavelength of that laser will be absorbed only by U235 and not by U238. So when you irradiate a mixture of 235 and 238, only these 235 atoms, uranium 235 atoms alone will absorb the laser. So those atoms will go to the excited state, or depending on the extent of absorption, they can even go become ionized. So what we have is, after the laser illumination, the U235 and U238, out of that mixture, uranium 235 will become ionized, whereas uranium 238 will undergo no change. So you have got a mixture of ions and you have got a mixture of normal atoms after the laser exposure. Then what we do is we will set these, we actually vaporize it in the beginning, and then this is allowed as a stream, and it will be allowed to flow flow through two electrodes. So that electrode will be carrying charge, and these ions or neutral atoms are coming near that electrode. So these charged atoms will undergo deflection when it is entering an electric field. So that is how we are separating. Since uranium 235 has absorbed the atom, it has been ionized and it has got charge, and when we allow that mixture to pass through an electric field, because of the electric field, the charged ions will be deflected to one side, whereas the other one will be passing without any change in its path. So we have got a separation between uranium 235 and 238. So this is how laser is used in isotopic separation, which is also an industrial application. And there are variety of other application. I would just like to mention some of them. LIDAR is an example. It is light detection and ranging. It is like, you send a laser light into to an object which is in the sky, and it will be reflected by that object, and the time taken by the light to come back to the station which is placed on Earth, and from that time you will be able to find out the distance of that object from the surface of the Earth. It is to identify obstacle, normally used in defense applications. This is referred to as LIDAR, light detection, and LI, it is actually coming from light detection and ranging. It is similar to radio detection and ranging, radar.